So thank you so much for the Organization of Iranian American Community for organizing this very timely briefing today. My talk is going to be focused on everyday form of resistance in Iran. And I think, as Dr. Kazarunian talked about, Iran's drive for regional hegemony that has led to terrorism and violence in the Middle East and elsewhere. One can argue such violence began with Khomeini's vision of explaining liberating Jerusalem via Karbala. But I think the real discourse lies in how his vision did not resonate with the Muslims around the world, and more importantly, in a very persistent and in a very organic manner with the people of Iran. I think if you look at Iran's history since 1979, in everyday form of resistance, Iranian people have pushed back, challenged, and stood up to the ideology of Khomeini. And Congressman Ted Poe was alluding to that in his remark. But it wasn't just Khomeini, but it's also his successor, Ayatollah Khamenei, who's currently the supreme leader. But if you kind of look at the history, the first demonstration in Iran was in March of 1979, less than a month after the topple of the Shah's regime and February 11th, the 79 revolution. It was a march that was organized by women protesting Khomeini's call for compulsory veiling. And there were more Muslim women attending that protest and that rally than non-veiled women, because they were pushing back on that ideology that Khomeini was forcing on the Iranian public. Fast forward to June of 1981. The largest political party in Iran, the People's Mujahideen Organization of Iran, along with other progressive personalities and political parties, organized a rally in Tehran to protest Khomeini's effort on political crackdown. More than 200,000 people attended that rally and demonstration. On that day, the Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps opened fire on peaceful demonstration and killed many and arrested thousands in days and months to come. On that day, Khomeini and his regime clamped down on any political discourse that was not aligned with them. And more importantly, on that day, it became clear to Khomeini that the only way he could stay in power is through oppression and force. In other words, his ideology did not resonate with the Iranian people and never took roots organically and naturally. The only way this regime has thrived over the years has been through force, terror, misogyny, violence, corruption, fraudulent elections, coercion, blackmail, nepotism, mafia-style network, threats, and fear-mongering tactics and strategies. That is how the Iranian regime has survived in the last 4 decades. History has shown that such regimes are bound to fall. In recent speech by the US President at the UN, he said, "The entire world must understand the good people of Iran want change. And other than the vast military power of the United States, that Iran's people are what their leaders fear the most." I wholeheartedly agree with that comment. The real conflict in Iran is between the Iranian people and the regime. So I think, as Dr. Kazarunian said, it really begs the question of what do Iranian people want? And I think that is critical for us to answer. For almost 4 decades, in everyday form of resistance, the Iranian people have called for democracy and freedom. They've called for free election where it's fair, free, and every vote counts. They have continued. This resistance has continued since 1981, since June of 1981, on the day that the IRGC opened fire on their peaceful demonstration. But what's important, it actually has transcended over generations since then. So it has become a multi-generational resistance movement. What the Iranian people want is rule of law, very simple. What Iranian people want, a modern judicial system based on the principle of presumption of innocence, the right to defense, effective judicial protection, and the right to be tried in public court by independent judge, not by religious authority or mullah-based Sharia law. Freedom of assembly, freedom to form parties, freedom of expression, economic freedom to engage in market economy and private investment, respect for all individual freedoms, including unconditional access to internet by all people. It is for this reason that we see public rallies in Iran that call for down with the Velayat Faqih, the supreme leader. The people of Iran want a society with religious tolerance, separation of mosque and state, gender equality, support for Universal Declaration of Human Rights, freedoms for all Iranian, and a non-nuclear republic. A form of government that believes in a peaceful coexistence with its neighbors and the world, believes in regional peace and cooperation, as well as respect for the United Nations Charter. These popular sentiments are actually reflected in a 10-point plan by Mrs. Maryam Rajavi. And there is an ongoing and a growing justice campaign for the 1988 massacre of the political prisoners. Their message is becoming sharper and is targeting the heart of the Iranian regime, which is Khomeini's fatwa. Khomeini issued a fatwa to eradicate the opposition members that were in prison during the 1988. But what's more important about that campaign is it's not only widespread within Iran, it's also becoming widespread across the world. So, on the third pillar of my argument, I want to bring us focus to the concept of Iran's organized opposition movement. In this case, ladies and gentlemen, I assert that Iran has rather an impressive opposition movement, and that is the National Council of Resistance and the People's Mujahideen Organization of Iran. The National Council of Resistance was founded in Tehran in July of 1981, a homegrown resistance movement that is resilient and has endured and thrived over the last 4 decades, represents the coalition force for change that is authentic, foundational, and aligned, and represents the popular sentiment of the Iranian people. It relies on an organized solidarity movement whose 120,000 of its members of supporters have been killed and executed by the regime.